7-minute film by Dogwood Alliance, which a number of you, we will send you the link to it, or even the actual file if you want it.
So the one that used to climate change, yeah.
Yes. Yes, it was, yeah.
Was this working before?
Yes. Press F5. No. No, hang on. It's good talk. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to speak to you. Can I crouch over you? I'm sorry.
Your shadow's partly on the screen at the moment.
I sit where you were sitting.
My name is Duncan Law, which you already knew, and I work with Transition Town Brixton and 3 days a week with Biofuelwatch. And what I'm happiest doing is coming up with, imagining, working with the community on pioneering the new paradigm, and that's us building community energy in Brixton and doing reuse and launching local currencies and so on. And I think that's practically the most powerful thing we can do, because everybody can get engaged in it's moving towards. But there are some things that I passionately feel that we have to say no to, because they're not going to give this new positive future any kind of chance. They will just foreclose on it. And for me, bioenergy is that thing. And I'm prepared to do some fairly strange things to say no to it. That's me dressed as a Virgin Air stewardess standing on top of a glass porch at Heathrow in 2009, for which I got quite severely fined. On the day, thank you, on the day where I became cover girl on Earth First News, which I'm quite proud of. And that was on the advent of their 25th anniversary, when they were making proposals to greenwash aviation. So, just before we get deep into this, we need to do a little bit of the green terms. So biomass, which we're going to talk about mainly, is a scientific term meaning everything that is or was living, including doors. Biofuels, everything that we use for fuel. Biofuel is the liquid stuff, which we don't need to talk about because Almond has. And biomass is the solid stuff, mainly wood, in the form of pellets and wood chips that is mainly imported, we'll come to that, but also purpose-grown crops and wastes, agricultural wastes and domestic wastes. Zero carbon bioenergy is the myth that is enshrined in Kyoto, in European targets and laws, and in UK policy and carbon calculations. The EU Commission defined it as a serious carbon accounting error. It's based on the idea that the carbon that's emitted will be taken up immediately somewhere else by regrowth. We know that that doesn't happen. Seconds to burn and decades to regrow. So that's the lie that underpins it all. And this is a terrifying graph of what might happen in terms of land use across the globe if we continue with this lie and continue expanding bioenergy to replace fossil energy. And basically you can see bioenergy has swamped nearly all unmanaged landscapes and forests. That basically means goodbye to biodiversity, and without biodiversity we don't have life on this planet.
Can you just go through the timeline?
Yes, sorry, the timeline. The timeline is. How do I do this again?
Page up.
There we are. The timeline is from 1990. We're about here, and that's the end of the century, basically. 2095.
The big hit happened around 2040, 50.
But it's just the picture of what can't happen, basically. And this, quickly looking at biodiversity, and supplied by Pete, which many thanks, a wonderful art project looking at the biodiversity within a cubic foot. This is the rainforest in Costa Rica, and this is 150 plants and animals that pass through it in 24 hours. Somebody inspired by that spent quite a lot longer in a cornfield in Iowa, and that is what he saw, and most of it was dying. That's what monocultures do to biodiversity. So, bioenergy is a dangerous false solution to climate change, to energy depletion and energy security. It's an excuse not to change. And it steals investment from real solutions. Normally I would also have shown evidence that bioenergy contributes more carbon to the atmosphere than it saves by supposedly displacing fossil energy. But that's the assumption, it makes climate change worse. So Biofuelwatch focuses now in the UK on biomass electricity. And this is us outside the Drax AGM. You're welcome sometime late April next year. Please come and join us. If I get that plug in. Why? Because it's the UK problem. It is the largest part of current UK renewable energy strategy to meet the Renewable Energy Directive European target by 2020. And that's my definition of biomass: burning foreign forests at maximum 38% efficiency to make UK electricity. It just sounds wrong, doesn't it? It's also a lurking threat. It's not talked about in any renewable energy discussions, and people just don't know the science, even quite well informed people. And I would say it's still stoppable. I would. So the background, the Renewable Energy Directive, we have to achieve 15% of all energy reduction from renewables by 2020. Climate Change Act is behind there, that built into all the talk is carbon reduction. And according to Vince Cable, the old think of keeping the lights on, that betrays so much of what is wrong about the way they think. The capacity crunch caused by nuclear and coal capacity closing down, which targets lead to government subsidies, ROCs, contracts for difference. The Green Investment Bank investing £100 million in Drax's 50% conversion to coal. The UK Guarantee Scheme using public money to support private developers' investment in big infrastructure schemes and biomass schemes. And of course all of this is driven by the big energy lobbies who want the profits from the subsidies, without which it's virtually all a financial non-starter. It would collapse if the subsidies went.
Can you say more about the guarantee scheme?
Yes,
how it works?
it's a treasury scheme called the UK Guarantee, Infrastructure Guarantee Scheme. And basically they choose projects and they underwrite up to a ceiling, a percentage of total investment, private investors' investment in those schemes. And in there are 3 big biomass projects, one in Tilbury, Eggborough if it goes ahead, and a project in Avonmouth by Helios. So if the investment doesn't bear fruit, then it's encouraging private investors to risk, giving them a safety net.
But Duncan, perhaps you could also explain that this is a very non-transparent process. I mean, there's very little accountability in this.
Yes. They choose projects which projects have to apply. They're then chosen and pre-qualified by the Treasury, and then there is really no possibility of input other than political input, which we've tried to lever into whether that project ultimately receives a guarantee or not. None of the biomass projects yet have received a complete promise of guarantee.
Is this so far talking about power stations?
It's all sorts of infrastructure projects, but in there are three biomass power stations, but also underground coal gasification and all sorts of other nonsense that we don't want to look at. They have no green remit. They do a risk assessment, but it's a purely financial risk assessment. It's not a green risk assessment. They talk about having to do government policy, but they're very arsy about paying for other government. You know, if the Treasury thinks they shouldn't be paying for something, the Treasury will refuse to support other departments' policies if they don't think it's a financially good idea. I really do need to move on. I'm awfully sorry, because otherwise we lose the continuity, and do ask questions afterwards. So why is biomass bad? Well, quite simply, the growth that is in the current pipeline means that the impacts will be terrible and awful to meet the 15% red target. But like climate change isn't going to stop in 2000 at the end of the century, neither is energy problems going to stop in 2020. So that curve, which starts, according to my curve, at importation, at the burning of 3.9 million tonnes of biomass in 12-13, if all the current projects were built, we would have an annual demand of in excess of 60 million tonnes. That's a factor increase of 19. And it is knocking on 7 times the domestic production of biomass in the UK. So you can see it's got to be import dependent, and it will be manipulating domestic markets as well.